We're here to help you navigate your business growth with strategic conversations and insights from experts in multiple industries. Welcome to Wayfinding Growth.
This episode is brought to you by Impulse Creative's Video Marketing Masterclass. George B. Thomas built out an 11-module on-demand course on how to leverage video in your business at impulsecreative.com/VFM for Video Masterclass. Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Dan Moyle.
And I'm Remington Begg.
And on today's episode, we are talking with Doug Davidoff, who is the founder and CEO of Imagine Business Development, a marketing agency and HubSpot partner like Impulse. He's actually directly advised more than a dozen companies who have successfully sold for a combined value of more than $1 billion. And it's stupid. It's like this guy. And when you set this up, Remington, you were like, I want to talk to Doug. This is going to be fun. He's wicked smart. You were more than right. And I love that Doug takes this no holds barred, no bullshit approach to business growth. So Remington, I want to know, you set this up, you were excited about it. What did you love about this episode? What are a couple of your takeaways?
So I really loved unpacking like the BFSC, and you're going to get to know what that is if you listen to it. And this is a longer listen than our typical episodes, but you have got to listen to it end to end. It's incredible. The big thing, two of the big things. One, he talked about that if you hear the words, this is the way to do this, that it's actually a trap. There's no one way to do anything, especially in sales. And then the other was obsessing about the destination and chilling about the path. Like that's a quote that I'm putting out like specifically for this and came straight from Doug's mouth. But you know, he talks that that's what he lives by. But like when you think about that from a marketing strategy or a company strategy point of view, like it's got to be incredibly clear. It was just an amazing episode.
And I took a ton of notes, and I had to whittle it down to two. One of them was solve for decision versus solve for the sale.
Yeah,
and it was very interesting. And like, even though I'm not in sales, but I'm all about growth mode, and so that kind of hit me right between the eyes. And then the other one was speed versus velocity, and how efficiency can kill your secret sauce.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, dude, yes, speed versus velocity. You got to have that vector. You got to know where you're going. So kind of along the destination line. So, yeah. Great stuff, man. I'm so excited you set this up. We had a great conversation. I just sat back and listened for a ton of it. So listeners, I hope you do the same. Here it is, season 2, episode 14 with Doug Davidoff. Let's set a course for growth. Doug, welcome to Wayfinding Growth. Thanks for taking time during your busy schedule to chat with me and Remington, man. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. I was trying to find my way to Wayfinding Growth, and I'm glad I finally got here. How about that? See, I got the dad jokes coming out from the start.
From the get-go. Those
are my favorite. Just ask my wife. Anyway.
Yes, he has puns.
It's true. So as we get into this, I want to find out a little bit about you, David. You have, as it were, charted your own course as you do for your clients as well as an agency guy. How did you kind of get to where you are? I mean, was it like an overnight success thing for you, or did you grapple with this agency life and growth mindset for a long time? How did you get here?
Yeah, it was an overnight success. I toiled for about 20 years, and then I woke up the next day. I went to sleep that night, and I woke up, and there it was. Yeah. Wow. That's an interesting question. I always want to give a disclaimer that I'm going to leave this conversation today, and I'm going to talk to my team. I'm going to say now, guys, okay, if we can do it like half as well as I just said we do it, then, I mean, we'll be legendary. So,
fair point.
You know, I always get nervous because people come on here and it's like, you know, you go over to your friend's house for dinner and the house is totally clean. And so your wife freaks out because your house is always messy, and she thinks every house is always clean because every time you go visit, it's clean. And it's like,
that's funny.
So, with that out of the way, well, how did I get here? I don't know. I wasn't ready for that question. How did you know, I've always been obsessed about the interaction between buyer and seller. And I think even before that, I've been obsessed about influence. And I mean, as a kid, how do you win an argument with your friends? Why do some people seem to get what they always want and other people don't? And I like to refer to myself as being strategically lazy.
Yes.
And
I like that.
And so I wanted to make sure that I was the one who got their way. And so that just led me to begin to get obsessed about how people make decisions, led me to the buy-sell relationship, which was really interesting because that's how people make decisions when risk is involved. And I was a salesperson. So, I mean, I started off, I was a sales guy, and so it was like, how can I get more without working? Like, I'm not going to hustle as hard as the high hustle sales guy. I mean, I respect them. And I know some people, I'm like, if I could work half as hard as they worked, I'd be on Forbes or something. But so it started that, that was a passion that led to sharing aspects about how to sell better. That led to me starting a company that focused on how companies could sell better. If I have time for a mission, my mission is to change how the world sells. That awesome. Led to becoming a HubSpot partner because we started seeing how the world was changing, how lead generation, and I've always been I've always been a holistic thinker, and so it became really clear that every time someone wanted to solve a sales problem, well, we had to do something with their marketing, and every time someone wanted to solve a marketing problem, we had to do something with their sales, and then from there, how we ended up doing what we do is we're really good at making mistakes really fast. It would be fair to say that I may oftentimes be wrong, but I'm rarely in doubt. But I notice walls very quickly. So when I run into a wall, it's like, oh, there's a data point. If you ever saw the show House, if you remember the show House, where he said, well, let's put the patient on this. And the doctor is just, well, doctor, if that's not the problem, if that's not the problem, and we give him that, that could kill him. And he'd go, well, we'll be able to add that to the diagnosis then to, further narrow down. And that's kind of how we got where we are is we've been really focused on the destination, and really, really flexible on the journey, to figure out how to put the pieces together. And then candidly we always did okay. And we had some years where we, kicked, and other years where we were kicked. And it was probably about 24 months ago that, the cool thing was we started dealing with issues and what we were building that we had encountered the surprises and problems. So we were no longer surprised by the problems. And then, so we actually have a pretty good, as good as anything I've ever been involved in terms of a structure of understanding, and even it's understanding like where there's no understanding. So you at least know where the ambiguity is. I mean, I think if you get rid of all the ambiguity, you just become something that you're just repeating. So you're going to lose a lot of the value creation growth opportunity, but yeah, so it's a whole lot of pinballing with a focus on where were we going. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Looking back and defining the direction of going forward. That's the definition of wayfinder right there.
Absolutely.
Oh, there you go. See, I mean, well, it's funny because the I don't know if I've ever told you where and why the name of the company is Imagine. So when I was a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, I was working on we were doing a dinner program. And one of the ways I explained what we did was I said, our job is to solve your problems before you have them. And so I wanted to create I wanted to lead off by saying something. And so I started off with think, an advisor solving your problems before you have them, something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, that just didn't quite, and I couldn't. And then all of a sudden I said, imagine. I'm like, wait, whoa. And then I tested it out, and I'll test it out right here. Think about your future.
Right.
All right. Now think about the experience you just had. Now imagine your future.
Right.
They're two distinctly different experiences, right? When you think about your future, you start today and you go to the next step, and you get weighed down by your barriers. When you imagine your future, you just jump right out. You think much bigger, and then you can look backward. Then you think about your barriers. And I've always thought that it's easier to overcome your barriers from behind them than from in front of them. And that's why we're imagining.
I love that. That's a huge snippet right there. That's great.
So I want to go back real quick before we can move into some more stuff here, David, with you. You talk about issues, so we'll get to shipwrecks in a minute. But I heard you say something about that triggered for me. you talked about being a sales guy first. How critical is sales, either experience or at least knowledge, for those leaders who are growth oriented?
Well, I mean, it depends how you define sales. I mean, I'm definitely in the Daniel Pink school. Everybody's a salesperson.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you're growth oriented, you've sold. Um, Sales is more about decision making, and I'll give our secret. I'll give my super secret away. I talk a lot about sales process, but the truth is, if you're thinking about sales process, you're thinking about the wrong thing. What you've got to solve for is a decision process. How do people make decisions?
Mm.
Here's a piece of trivia for you. Did you know the word decide and the word homicide have the same Latin root, and they both mean the same thing? They both mean to kill. So when you commit homicide, you kill a Homo sapien. When you decide, you kill options. Right? And so that's why the decision process is so hard. It's actually, I mean, I could geek out with you and talk about the biochemical and brain response. When we make decisions like what's for dinner, we actually go into the same biochemical responses if our life were in danger. And so it's about how people make decisions. So going back to the real root of your question, if you're growth oriented, you have to have the experience to know what you know and know what you don't know. The biggest danger that I see is that is twofold. Someone got exposed to something purely in theory, and so they think they know everything, and so they I think it was Mark Twain, at least it's attributed to him, who said, it's not what you don't know that'll hurt you, it's what you think you know that ain't so. The other thing that I'm seeing, just it's a classic mistake right now, is you hire somebody from a company that did something, and because the person was there and involved in it, you think that they figured out how to do it. And really they learned one way to do something that worked in that situation, but they didn't even understand all of the trade-offs and the bumps and things like that were involved in that. So, you don't have to be a salesperson. You don't have to have deep sales experience. You do have to be an observer. You do have to understand it. And you have to be able to ask a lot of questions. And I mean, if you ever say, well, the way to do that, and you're talking about sales, the way to do that is, then you don't know enough about sales, and you're going to run into problems, because there is no one way to do it. When it comes down to the end, it's really, it's highly dependent on a whole variety of factors to determine what that right path is for you.
That's amazing.
That's good.
Oh man, this is gonna get deep, people.
There we go, man. We'll be sitting back. Hey, where's the scotch? We need to pour some scotch here, and then we can get.
No, that's just iced tea. I'm kidding. That's what's really for the scotch. No, it is good. So David, I want to get into. I'm going to let Remington talk about this BFSC idea here in a minute. But another thing you mentioned was some of the issues or obstacles that you went through during growth. And you've already been, vulnerable about it a little bit. But I want to know, what would you consider one of your biggest shipwrecks during your journey so far, and what you learned from that? Like, where did it really go sideways?
The biggest by far is, I don't want to say it was a hiring mistake, but it was definitely a management mistake. Someone who I gave way too much to and was there much longer than they should have been. So I'm kind of a micromanager by nature, in that I want to dig in and understand everything, and I think really fast. And so when I was young and leading sales teams, that got me into a lot of trouble. And so I overcompensated. And I'm both a micromanager, and I firmly believe in empowerment. So I'm a walking conflict. And so the biggest shipwreck was, I mistook abdication with delegation. And a lot of top performers have this problem, because we believe if we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem. And so we keep saying, well, I got to do my part. Like we're really good at identifying how we're contributing to the problem. And then we go, well, I got to fix me first before I can blame it on them, before I can say it's that. And and at some point it's like, well, you know what? No, you're part of the problem. You're always going to be part of the problem. There's always a problem. At some point, that's just what is. And so the lesson that I got from that, and I think this is a lesson that applies from the first job you take to anyone who runs their own company or whatever, is you have to own your authority. And that means that you've got to make the call. And the only constant. It's funny, when I was the first company I owned, I had an assistant who was getting frustrated, and she was complaining to my brother. It was a family-owned business. She was complaining to my brother about, well, Doug does the Bob, et cetera, et cetera. And my brother said, hey, you know what, Sarah, you might be right, but here's the only thing I can tell you: he's not going anywhere. So, you need to decide, can you live with that or can you not live with that? But it's like, he's not going anywhere. And so, the only thing that's going to be constant in your journey through life is that you're going to be there. And so you got to own that authority. And I think, and that means that, you're going to own your mistakes, and you're going to make that mistake. I do think that, better to make a mistake of doing something rather than the mistake of not doing something, because you don't learn anything when you make a mistake not doing something. Sure. And I abdicated it probably cost us about 3 years. I'd be 3 years further down the path. And actually it probably cost me about 3 years in a really hot place. So I'm going to really seriously need scotch in a second if I talk about that too much. But yeah, it's figuring out that place. Where is the difference between abdication and delegation?
That's awesome.
That's really good. And then so on the other side of that coin, then what would be one of your proudest moments, one of your biggest wins that you can learn from too?
Oh man, I much prefer talking about my mistakes. It's so much easier.
That's funny.
Actually the team that we put together today, the people that I get to talk to, and Lord knows we have far of a bigger hill to climb than we've climbed, but there are things that we are now actually doing that 2 years ago were still totally theoretical, and so we've increased the confidence to like for example, we're in a number of different places. I did it with my sales team first, and I'm beginning to roll it out to our clients. Is we're radically shifting how and when you focus your metrics on your sales team. And so we're separating the scoreboard from compensation. So you still get a commission, but we're moving the scoreboard to much earlier in the process. And it's leading to a radical change to how salespeople behave that really is addressing a lot of the areas that people talk about. So, that's one area. The things that my team is now doing, because I found that balance and I continue to struggle that. And Jess, our director of operations, I look at what she's doing today. We have a client that we've gone through the entire cycle of everything. And I'm like, wait, I didn't know we had done anything. And including a client problem, like where I would always get the call, right? And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wait, and so beginning to see that and going, oh, wait a second, this imagination thing might actually play.
This thing's moving.
Yeah, how about that?
That's great.
Now again, we got 100 other things that
of course,
our house is very messy, but
sure,
but the closet's clean.
But it's a good house.
The closet's clean. There you go.
So I want to hear you two riff on this BFSC thing. Remington talks about it.
Yeah.
We've used it. So I'm going to back up and let you guys talk about this for a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah. So a little background here. So Doug and I have known each other for a really long time. We started actually.
Even though you didn't like me at first.
I didn't say that. I just didn't. I didn't know you, right? I knew of you. Big difference. And in talking with him, I think it was Partner Day last year. We really started right. Riffing. We set up a couple meetings and we had some just like open conversations about like what's going on. And I I like Doug because he's a very intellectual thinker, and talker. And that was like one thing that I really liked. So when we started talking, he dropped this bomb on me. It's got to be about 6 months ago, of BFSC. And, I have always historically done like SWOT analysis, internally and externally. And a lot of that stuff comes across accusatory. And I think I just brought it up as like, like a recursory, like coming back and like assessing a project. And he dropped this bomb on me, and it's like literally changed my life. So I want people to really think about this because it changes your mindset and how you think about things. So Doug, why don't you just riff on like the introduction of why you think it's important, BFSC, and maybe what the heck it is. And then we can start riffing a little bit further.
I think we should just say BFSC the whole time, and like we could have a contest that someone has to figure out what that means. It's part of the whole of the whole understanding where abdication and delegation come about, and no one knows how to do their job better than the person that's doing their job, but that doesn't mean they know how to do their job. Think about that. For a little while, and it's that balance, and I'm a big believer in creating strategic tension, because we naturally follow paths of least resistance. So where we can bring tension in, it forces us to think through things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that drives me crazier than complaining or bitching. But when you say to somebody, look, don't bring me a problem unless you have a solution, right? That's a really common riff that we hear in small and mid-sized businesses on the management side. The problem is that I might know a problem and I don't know the solution. And if I've been told don't bring a problem if I don't know the solution, then something goes wrong and they go, yeah, I kind of knew that was going wrong. And well, why didn't you say anything? Well, because I didn't have a solution. And so what we started doing, we talk about it. We actually, it's part of our onboarding. I review it when somebody starts, and we actually now have a monthly meeting. And I actually don't attend the monthly meeting. It's run by Jess, our director of operations. So BFSC stands for better, faster, stronger, cheaper. And basically what we say is, look, your job, in addition to doing whatever your job is anything that you see that you think could help us do something better, do it faster, do it stronger, or do it less expensively. Lower, get the cost out. Cheaper is an easier thing to remember, and it keeps it down to 4 letters. Then that whether it's your job or not, whether it's directly related to you or not, you owe it to us to talk about and think about, and to share. Now, in a small business, the whirlwind, what we're doing on a daily basis is so massively time consuming that we don't have time to think about that. And it is something that frustrates entrepreneurs. And I joke with my friends who are entrepreneurs who complain that their employees don't think like them. And I go, well, it's a good thing that they don't think like you, because if they thought like you, they would start their own business and they would compete with you. Right.
Right.
And so there's a structure that we bring. And so when you start off, like the first monthly meeting, our BFSC meeting, anything that you think can, better, faster, stronger, cheaper. Well, maybe we could do this, right? I mean, it really, really soft. And it's like, okay. And then, the second meeting, someone brings something up, and now as people, now we'll have conversations about something, and well, it used to be me. It's increasingly other people bring up, well, you know what? If we did this and this, we could take 4 steps out of the process. It would allow us to, we could take a third of the time out, and it's really all useless time anyways. It's like, hey, who would have thought that? Also, when we bring certain ideas like documentation, right?
Yep.
Everybody hates documentation. It's like a salesperson with a CRM, right? Well, we need to document our processes. Well, yeah, I mean, intellectually I get it, but I mean, it's a pain in the ass, and it's difficult. And and there's a little bit of that fear that, well, wait a second, if we document everything, then, do I become unnecessary, et cetera. Now, as they start seeing, like I always say, if you want a salesperson to use a CRM, you've got to show how the CRM enables them to do their job better, faster, and stronger. Now they go, oh, wait a second. Oh yeah, I wouldn't get checklists, right? Everyone should use a checklist, but no one uses a checklist because I'm an expert. I don't need a checklist. Right. Well, when you talk about it from the standpoint of, well, how much faster could you do this if you didn't have to think about everything that you needed to do? Oh yeah, that. So it both, we talk about ownership mentality. It unlocks, it creates a structure so that you begin to think like an owner. But, and this is the key, and this is something I'm seeing across the board right now, especially with tech and everything, where we're in a period where people are obsessed with efficiency and speed.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I'm strategically lazy. I am obsessed with velocity. And a lot of people don't understand that there's a significant difference between speed and velocity. They're the same thing, except velocity adds vector to it, which is progress, right? And so you're going to run really, really fast. Dude, I don't have the energy to hustle like you do. I'm not willing to put in 14-hour days every day. I'm not willing to travel 237 days a year. I know some people who do, and God bless them, but they are running. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to figure out how can I do in a day what it takes you how can I get the result in a day that it takes you 5 days to get? And then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the other 4 days off. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. Now, I mean, that's why I said it'd be on Forbes if I went ahead and just did the next 4 days. But so we have a tendency without realizing it that we talk efficiency all the time. And in the pursuit of efficiency, we kill our secret sauce. It's like every successful business is like every successful family. They're dysfunctional in their own unique way. And when you focus on efficiency, you kill that dysfunction. You follow the rules, but you kill what makes you special. Here, what we're saying is better and cheaper, stronger and faster. And so it builds that tension that where we got, we've been brought up in this either or world. That's how we got raised. That's how we've been socialized. And it really begins to change how people think about it. And it not only leads to, I think, a lot of, I'm going to say it's innovation. It's not like the innovation that, you're not going to go out and raise, $50 million on that innovation, but it's really the more powerful innovation. It's the thing that we do 70 times a day. How do we get better at that? So that's what that is. At least that's my rant on it, my riff on it today. I don't know if that's what I said.
Yeah. No, so I like that. So I like the and in there, like the better and the faster, and kind of thinking about that way. But I have to say, like, I really love, so this is a new nugget for me, like efficiency versus velocity is pretty powerful stuff. Right. And so when we think about, tying in that faster and, and that better, like we just went through like an all hands, and I brought my things to it as we're like introducing it more organizationally. But as we start thinking about this, I love that you brought in the fact that like it's kind of soft in the beginning, the first couple of times it's brought up, right? Because they're like testing the waters. Like, if I say this, is it going to hurt? But now they're getting a little bit more motivated. So that's pretty cool. So when you talk about like things getting faster, can you give an example of something like that? And you could say no, but can you give an example of something that was a conversation piece that you guys had internally that you're like, this just has to happen faster, or if we do this would make things faster?
So if we go back a couple years ago, I had somebody back when I did more things around SEO. I had somebody who had some SEO experience, and it would just frustrate the hell out of me because she would take 10 hours to do an SEO audit or whatever. And I mean, she was smart and she was good, and she just explained to me always, but that's what it takes. That's what it takes. And it was becoming adversarial for lack of a better word. And so then I said to her, here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell me, how would you, if you only had 5 hours to do this, how would you get me the same result in 5 hours? We can't do that. I said, I know you can't do that. But if you only had 5 hours,
Mm.
How could you do that? I'm not asking you to do it. We're going to play a game here, right? Because you just found out you could go on. I asked, who's your favorite entertainer, and so you're about to follow Garth Brooks on tour for his next 20 concerts, but you only got 5 hours and you got to get this done. I know you can't do it, but if you could do it, by the way, that's a really powerful question. It works great with your kids too. When they say I can't do it, you go, I know you can't do it, but if you could do it, what would it look like? How would it? And she actually came back and it was 4 hours.
Wow.
And so, and she actually kind of grudgingly said, well, like this is still really good. We should still do this, but we don't have to do it first. Right.
That's amazing.
Okay. And so what it does, so we have a process, where we build that system design. And it leads to how ultimately the technology is going to be implemented, how playbooks are going to be developed, et cetera. We, at the end of every project that we do on that, we ask the question, okay, well, if we only had 80% of the time to do what we did, how would we have done it?
Okay. That's awesome.
And by the way, we have to do it, and it has to be as good.
Right.
And what we find is that we actually, it actually makes it better. We had one time where the answer was, well, I can't really get it out, but I could reduce my time if we hired somebody, or if we had so-and-so, if we taught so-and-so how to do this, then I wouldn't have to do 100% of this part of the process. And I could be working on this while they're working on that. That would both allow us to get it done a little bit faster, but it would also free up more. And, oh, by the way, the person who's going to do it gets paid less than the person who was doing all of it. So it had, that same, so that's how we now did it cheaper. And to let you know, when we started, the first time we did the project, and we were figuring it out while we were doing it, I probably ran 90 to 95% of it. Then we got it down to I was doing 80% of it. Now I'm doing 10 to 20%. If it's a highly complex, bigger project, then I probably do about 20%. But I actually now have very, very little to do with it. And I spent years. We actually had an initiative. I didn't even create it. It was called the D-Doug Initiative. We had that as an initiative.
The D-Doug Initiative?
The D-Doug Initiative. It was like,
That's so incredible.
And what's funny was the attention began to be use Doug as little as possible because we were too dependent on him. But that quickly created a whole mess of problems because now we didn't talk to Doug when maybe if we had talked to Doug, we could have like I asked somebody, why did you spend 10 hours figuring that out? You literally could have asked me. I could have given you the answer in 2 minutes. And
right.
The person said, well, Beth told me that our goal is not to, that we shouldn't use you unless we absolutely positively have to. So I wanted to, and so it created all these things that were just not, and it also created the royal, I'm too good for, which, and this better, faster, stronger, cheaper just changes the nature of the conversation. Like even when we're not having a BFSC meeting, it's kind of like,
you're thinking
you asking these questions, letting me, it's become ingrained to just what our thinking process is, that we got me out of the process, not because the goal was to get me out of the process. The byproduct was that I got out of the process.
Right.
And if you look at, I think if you look at 90% of the results we all want, the mistake that we make is we look at them as the objective rather than as the byproduct of achieving the objective.
Huh.
Right? And so that's how we begun to kind of change that mindset.
That's pretty awesome. I love it. So that's an interesting, that's just awesome insight into that, because you might be working on one of those things, but that could create some dysfunction. So the combination of them is really the big picture that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and it also plugs into someone says, well, if we spent more money here, we'd be able to do it better and faster, and that would have the impact. And sometimes we say, hey, you know what, that's absolutely right. That you're 100% right. If we could do that, and we'll put it on the board for when we have the resources. Or we have one thing right now where I've communicated to the team, you're 100% right. That's how we should do it. And when we're twice as big as we are right now, then we can do that. Right. Until then, we can't really justify doing that. And so now I think the biggest problem when you're growing a business, especially a small business, is that you're constantly living in two places. You're the company you want to be, but you're still the company that you're trying to stop being. And if you just stop being the company that you aren't, well, you haven't become the company that you are, and that's where you don't get traction.
Right.
And so here it's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're still going to do things that we know are not the right thing to do. They're not the best thing to do. But hey, given that we can't do that, how can we do that in half the time, right? How can we do that, 20% less? And it's amazing if you throw some of those exercises out at people, and like if you said, if we had to cut our budget in half tomorrow, how would we do everything that we're doing without? And I know we can't do it, and you're not going to get, like, the goal of that exercise isn't even to get to half. And you say something like, we've got to cut half of our, we got to cut X. Ground rule is no one can be laid off, no one can be fired. That
makes everything.
It takes away the low hanging fruit, and it helps people feel a little bit safer. And so you don't cut 50% out, but you cut 10% out. I mean, if you think about it, 80% of what we do doesn't really matter. I mean, I know that doesn't make us feel good, but it really, and I don't mean to say that you could just stop doing 80% of what you do and just do 20%.
Right.
Because you still have to do something else, and there's still the something else. But it's like, if you did this or you did this, and 80% of those things, it wouldn't make any difference.
Right.
The key is where is that crucial 20% that really is the difference. Like, what makes Warren Buffett a genius? Warren Buffett just naturally sees that 20%. And that's why he makes an investment in a company that everyone goes, why is he doing that? That doesn't make any sense. We're paying attention to the noise, right? He's able to see, no, this is that critical inflection point. And so I don't think I'm ever going to be anywhere near to the point of a Warren Buffett. By the way, any great venture investor, that's what they do. They don't. I mean, we've met them, we've talked to them. They don't know anything about the products or this. It's all, they get that, and you talk to them, they'll say, there's like 2 to 3 things I look for. And if they have those 2 to 3 things, I almost don't even worry about anything else.
Right.
And the closer we can get to that, but by the way, it also opens up the whole, and I try to live my life this way, obsess about the destination, chill about the journey, chill about the path. We humans get obsessed about the path, and we get overly flexible about the destination, right? And so that's what change. That's why change is so scary. And I don't think I'm unique that I deal with change. I have some higher tolerance of change, because Lord knows, if I think this is going to happen at 2:00 and it happens at 2:15, I get angry. Like, no, that's not how it was supposed to be, right? So I don't have some special change gene. It's that if the destination hasn't changed and just the path has changed, then to me it's not really change.
Right.
Because I'm not thinking about the path. Now I need people to think about the path more than I do. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But that this type of conversation begins to go, oh, wait a second. We can have multiple paths, and that doesn't mean that like, what are the things that we can't change because they're core to us. The fewer of those things you have, the more dynamic you'll be as an organization, the more dynamic you'll be, the more you'll be able to take advantage of opportunities without becoming opportunistic. And I use the term opportunistic where we get transactionally opportunistic. We're constantly playing for the short term, which just, that just becomes a Sisyphean task.
Yeah. There's so many nuggets in this.
Yeah.
Feel what I'm talking about?
Nugget.
Dan?
Yes.
See what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So cool. So now we're going to get a little bit tactical here. So you have these monthly with your team, or they have it now without you, for the sounds of it. What kind of tools do you guys use to keep track of that? Like, is everyone keeping a tally and writing into like a wiki so that it can be reviewed and talked about? Or is it like they just talk about it at the end of the month? Are you doing these, like, how often are you doing these? Is it monthly or is it after projects? I got a whole bunch of questions.
So we do it. So there is a monthly BFSC meeting, and it's hilarious. So we just had one Monday. I've had 3 conversations with Jess today, and she laughs, and I'm like, what? It's like, somebody brought that up in the BFSC meeting on Monday, and so, Jess logs it. I mean, so we don't have a wiki per se. We may do that. In its own way, what I want us to be BFSC thinkers.
Yep.
Right. And so I don't want to overly formalize it, because it's like, I talked about it being soft in the beginning. The BFSC meeting can never be a meeting that anyone gets in any trouble for. Safe. If you've got the dumbest idea in the world, or you have no idea whatsoever,
it just gets recorded.
Yeah, it gets, and like that person who didn't say anything for 6 months. No, I got nothing. No, I got nothing. All of a sudden in month 7, they bring something, and it's like whoa, holy cow, that's a where did that come from?
Where have you been?
Right. That person might also be the one who just shares incremental things as you go. And if you were to add that all up, nobody wants to be judged. We judge people in those meetings. You know what I mean?
Right.
And everyone is afraid that they're the only person thinking this, or you're going to think this is stupid, or, and so, I mean, it gets recorded. But what we also want to be, and I made this mistake all the time. I mean, because remember, I'm addicted to the destination. It's like,
right.
Hey, yeah, there's a better path. Let's drop everything in. Hey, yeah, that's a better path. Let's drop. Right. And before you know it, we got 76 initiatives that we're all in the middle of.
I do that to Dan all the time.
That's true.
Yeah. So we did this crazy thing. Actually, this is the first quarter that fully, totally, completely it was done. So we treated ourselves like our clients, and we did it internally and externally. So for our clients, we're just doing customer acquisition, customer success. For us, it was everything, which is we operate on the basis of what we call 90-day epics. What's this 90 days about? And so that so we're focused on our 90-day initiatives. Our 90-day, we've got our 90-day focus. So the BFSC stuff that comes that's related to those 90-day pieces gets integrated into whatever it is that we're doing. What I'm finding is, this is the funny thing about letting go, is I actually have to think of it. Usually I just always knew. When we start talking about, okay, what's our focus for our next epic? That's where that catalog of the 90-day of the 90-day material comes. And look, every BFSC meeting is not like someone has earth-shattering ideas that take, that increase productivity by 20% or this or that.
Sure.
I think I don't know, I'm going to ask this question. I think in some cases, like, I know I come up with a lot of ideas, and if I were to be in a meeting where the ideas I shared in a situation were all logged, I would get really, really embarrassed, because probably 90% of them wouldn't be really good after about 20. They don't marinate well, right?
Yeah.
24 hours, they go bad.
Sure.
And so, like, I wouldn't want a record. I know, I wouldn't want a record of that, and that would almost make me feel like I need to really think through it before I share it. So there's the reason we still do the meeting and we'll always do the meeting is it's the sharing conversation of BFSC and the this to the that, and someone says this, and then someone else says that, and then someone else thinks without even ever saying anything about how that relates to them, and all of a sudden does something different or follows up differently, or we became aware that we need to train. I need to train my team better on our tech stack, because it's there. They hear me talk about it all the time, but no one knows what the hell 90% of. I got one person who uses one of the tools, uses it regularly, and apparently in a survey that came out from a BFSC conversation, said it wasn't necessary to her job. And I said, wait, are you? And I write a check for that, right? And I'm like, wait, do we use it? She's, oh yeah. I'm like, do you think it's not necessary? She's like, no, I don't think it's not necessary. But if we didn't have it, I would still be able to do my job. I'm like, oh, okay, this means right. And so even just in that, I would never have, that. So it's those types of things. We don't do it as religiously post exercise, post projects as we should. We're getting better at that. And we're also getting better. It's something I want to start doing as it relates to, as we finish a client epic. Okay, in this 90 day, let's look back on the last 90 days. What, what could we do better, faster, stronger, cheaper, et cetera. So
that's awesome. I love how it's ingrained in your culture. I think that it's an amazing thing. That's really great. Yeah. And
it's funny. You got to say something a million times. They talk about repeat it. And I think this, as you're talking about this, the lesson that I just got is, if you had asked me, is it ingrained in your culture? I'm like, oh, no, we're still, but now I realize in terms of it's not this, culture is not the, oh, yep, there it is. It's just, it's kind of, it's interesting.
It's like how you operate. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And I look for big, I think you're like me, where's the big flash? Yep, we got that. Yep, we nailed that. Right.
Right.
So BFSC has become part of our culture in an invisible way. I didn't, no sign flash that said, hey boss, we're thinking BFSC now. Right. It actually, I didn't even realize how much it was ingrained until we had this conversation.
Awesome.
Actually, I told our team that I was doing this. Like, oh wow, that's cool. And because they're all, so yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's great. That's good
stuff. Absolutely. So if you could be a wayfinder to someone, Doug, what would your biggest piece of advice be to them as they're trying to lay out that journey that may change, but if growth is the destination, what's your biggest piece of advice for somebody?
So I don't think growth can be the destination. I think the destination has to be clearer than that. I'll try to be relatively quick on you. You've noticed that's not my strong suit. And I'm going to get really intellectual. I'm going to get really intellectual for you in a second. So because I've been obsessed this year about two things, about poker and percentages and the brain. And there's this really powerful chemical that gets released called dopamine.
Yep.
That's insanely addictive. And half the stuff we do that's stupid is because of dopamine, and half the stuff we do that's brilliant is because of dopamine. Dopamine is actually released in anticipation of. It's why achieving the goal is never as fun as actually pursuing the goal, because the dopamine is actually released in the pursuit of. It's the anticipation that causes dopamine to be released, not the achievement. I learned that when I'm ambiguous, my team can't get their dopamine release, and so they're all pain with no joy. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, because growing is painful. That's why we call it growing pains, right?
Right.
And so especially if you're the entrepreneur or the leader, I've learned this working with companies too. I know what our vision is.
Sure.
Right? I'm always clear on what our vision is. I just actually had a conversation with my with a client of mine. I said, hey Donna, I got to tell you right now, I am confused about what we're doing and what the next step is. And the net of it was, I wasn't confused. Nothing had changed. there was a whole lot of noise around this. And he's like, oh, no, Doug, I let him say that because, he needs to be able to say his piece, et cetera, but nothing has changed. And I realized, most people don't have the guts to ask that question. They don't, my team, and I think this is true of most people, they don't come up and they ask me that. And so now they get confused, right? And I get angry because what do you mean nothing has changed? I would tell you if something had changed. Well, it sounded right. And so
interesting.
What does growth mean? And that's why we've gone to, so we have our big vision goal, which, that can be however long you want it to be. What does that mean in a measurable time period? And we chose 90 days because we think 90 days is long enough for something meaningful to happen, long enough for a change to mean something, but short enough that if you're doing the wrong thing, that you're
figure
not,
it out.
stuck, doing, and so you, and so we get those releases. And then to answer your question, Dan, the biggest thing that I got from this, and let me tell you, man, I fought this for 30 years and I'm still fighting it, but I finally accepted it. Less is more. Less is more. And better to have what is the focus, one thing, and we haven't gotten to one thing, but it would be better to have one thing.
Sure.
Than to have 7 things. And so if you can figure out, so we are doing more, and this is where BFSC comes to, we're doing more and more of what's the one thing that if we improve there, it would have the biggest byproduct. Other things would naturally get better. What I have found is as we have gotten better at narrowing down and eliminating that ambiguity, we actually get more done. And what I mean by that is we actually do accomplish more initiatives because we only talked about 3, because in pursuing those 3 and having that clarity, the whirlwind became a little less of a fight. People had a little bit more agency, a little bit more freedom to act. They didn't have to balance as many things, and it allowed that creativity to spring. So
less is more.
Growth is, tomorrow in my presentation, I've got a less is more slide. I meet with a client and I say, well, what's your objective? They said, well, we want to grow. I said, well, how much do you want to grow? As much as possible.
Right.
Well, what am I supposed to do with that? Right. Because the other thing too is if I don't know what the growth is and if I don't know what the growth means, then as a player on your team, I don't know if I want to die on that hill with you. I don't know what the game is, right? Yeah. How many points do I need to score to win? Are we playing golf where I want to have fewer? Are we playing basketball where I want to have more? It sounds kind of silly, but the more you can focus on what is the destination, and then growth is a byproduct. Profit is a byproduct.
Gotcha.
And it's funny. I met my wife the week after I gave up meeting somebody. Right? I'm like, I'm traveling too much. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, there she is, right? And how many times do we see that? If you're on the phone as a salesperson and you're thinking sale, you're not going to get anything. But when you're letting go, when's the best time to make a sale? Right after you closed one, because you're like,
because you're excited.
Hey, whatever, I don't care what, right? And so the more you let that happen, the more it can be clear for everybody. And then, as a leader, and especially as an entrepreneur, I made the mistake of trying to find the why of growth that was my why. Right? T.S. Eliot was a banker. And the person, his boss tried to convince him that he could be a great banker. You know why T.S. Eliot was a banker? Because he wanted a job that would pay the bills, that would enable him to write poetry. Right? And I bet you that T.S. Eliot probably would have been a banker longer than he had been if instead of his boss telling T.S. Eliot his boss's why, he figured out, hey, the more you do this, the more time you can have to write poetry. So I know I've got people that want to be part of the growth journey that I'm on for their why. I've got mine. And I think the more each each person can be involved. And I actually think this applies to customers as well. If the destination is clear, we can all attribute and be motivated by our whys. We spend too much time. I know I spent too much time trying to get you to understand that my why. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not, if you're not doing something different than like those are the things that got me jazzed. But
right,
but they don't get the head. You guys go them. So that would be my.
Interesting.
Was that tactical enough? Did that get you?
That was great. I think you had like 12 of them, but
Okay,
but you're Doug Davidoff.
There you go. If I just say it without breathing, then I find that people let me just keep talking. Right?
Until you just.
That's true. That's right.
Pretty much.
Awesome, Doug. Man, this has been great. We've got so much to unpack on this, and I think listeners will get a lot out of this, man. Thanks for making time today on this.
It was fun. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Well, good luck in your presentation tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. We'll put some links in the show notes to Imagine Business Development and to Doug, to your social and everything. So, yeah, man, have fun.
I will. You guys too.
All right, man. Cheers. Thanks. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please share it. Post it, tweet it, gram it, email a friend. Give the gift of knowledge to someone you know that could benefit from it. And if you really loved it, please consider leaving a rating and written review on your podcast player of choice. And as always, go to wayfindinggrowth.com for resources and past episodes. Remember, we're here to help you navigate your business growth with strategic conversations and insights from experts in multiple industries. Thank you for listening to Wayfinding Growth.